Let me tell you something. Some of y'all are giving too much power to the people who hurt you. The moment a man changes his energy, ignores your value, pulls away, or breaks your heart, suddenly, your whole life starts revolving around confusion. You stop sleeping peacefully. You replay conversations in your mind. You check your phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message that may never come. And without realizing it, you hand your emotional power to the same person who wounded you. Now listen carefully. A man is never more confused than when the woman he expected to break becomes stronger. Oh yeah, because most people expect reactions. They expect tears. They expect emotional chaos. They expect you to chase answers, chase closure, chase validation. But when you become calm, focused, disciplined, and emotionally grounded, everything changes. Now he starts wondering. Now he starts thinking. Now he feels the shift. See, confidence is quiet. Real power is quiet. A woman who truly knows her worth does not have to beg somebody to see it. She does not have to compete for attention, and she definitely does not destroy herself trying to hold on to somebody who keeps hurting her. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to stop reacting emotionally to pain and start responding with strength. How to protect your peace instead of sacrificing it for temporary affection. How to confuse a man not with games, but with growth, self-respect, and emotional discipline. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do after being hurt is heal so well that her energy becomes unreachable to the people who took it for granted. Let me tell you something powerful. Silence is misunderstood by a lot of people. They think silence means weakness. They think silence means you have nothing to say. But sometimes silence is the loudest message a person can send, especially when someone hurts you. See, when a man hurts a woman emotionally, he often expects a reaction, not because he's always cruel, but because human beings are conditioned to expect emotional responses from emotional pain. He expects the crying calls, the long paragraphs, the emotional arguments at midnight. He expects you to chase clarity. He expects you to demand explanations. And sometimes, without realizing it, he measures his importance by how emotionally reactive you become. But the moment you become calm instead of chaotic, something shifts. Now he's confused, because calmness carries power. Most people react immediately when they're hurt. They say things they don't mean. They expose every emotion they feel in the moment. And while emotions are natural, uncontrolled emotions often place your power in someone else's hands. The person who hurt you starts controlling your mood, your peace, your sleep, your confidence, even your self-worth. That's dangerous. A woman who understands emotional discipline understands that not every feeling deserves an immediate reaction. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is pause, observe, think, breathe, and protect your dignity before protecting the relationship. Because once words leave your mouth, you can't take them back. And listen carefully. Silence does not mean you ignore your pain. It means you refuse to let pain make your decisions. There's a difference. A lot of women believe they must constantly explain themselves to be understood. But real maturity teaches you something important. People often understand exactly what they're doing. Over-explaining your pain to someone who keeps repeating the same behavior only drains your spirit. At some point, your silence becomes self-respect. And there's something deeply unsettling about a woman who no longer argues for her value. A woman who stops trying to convince someone to treat her properly. A woman who quietly changes her energy instead of begging for change. That kind of silence forces reflection. Because when you stop reacting emotionally, the other person no longer has control over the emotional atmosphere. Suddenly, they are left alone with their own thoughts, their own actions, their own guilt, their own confusion. And that silence becomes heavy. See, emotional reactions are predictable. Calmness is unpredictable. That's why silence carries so much weight. When somebody expects anger but receives composure, they begin questioning things. Why is she so calm? Why isn't she fighting for me anymore? Why does it feel like her energy changed? That uncertainty affects people more deeply than shouting ever will. Now let's be clear. This is not about manipulation. This is not about playing childish games. This is about emotional intelligence. There is a difference between silent treatment and peaceful detachment. Silent treatment is used to punish. Peaceful detachment is used to protect yourself. One comes from ego, the other comes from wisdom. And wisdom understands that peace is expensive. You cannot allow every disappointment to steal your emotional stability. You cannot keep sacrificing your mental health trying to force somebody to appreciate your heart. At some point, your energy deserves boundaries. You know what really changes a woman's life? The moment she realizes she does not need to attend every emotional battle she's invited to. That changes everything, because now she stops reacting to temporary emotions and starts responding with intention. She stops proving her worth to people committed to misunderstanding her. She stops chasing explanations from people who already showed her their priorities through actions. And suddenly, she becomes stronger emotionally. Not louder, stronger. There's a quiet confidence that develops when you learn to control your reactions. You start understanding that your peace matters more than winning arguments. Your dignity matters more than emotional revenge. Your future matters more than temporary validation. And the beautiful thing about silence is this: it reveals truth. When you stop forcing conversations, people reveal their real effort. When you stop chasing, people reveal their real interest. When you stop overextending yourself emotionally, people reveal whether they genuinely value your presence or only enjoyed your attention. Silence exposes everything. And sometimes the person who hurt you only realizes your emotional value after your reactions disappear. Not because you became cold, but because your absence of emotional chaos changes the entire dynamic. Now they feel distance. Now they feel uncertainty. Now they notice what your energy used to bring into their life. But by then, something inside you has already started changing too, because silence also heals you. It gives you space to think clearly, space to reconnect with yourself, space to remember who you were before emotional exhaustion became your daily routine. And that's the real power. Not making someone miss you, not making someone regret hurting you. The real power is becoming emotionally strong enough that your peace no longer depends on somebody else's behavior. That is true confidence. That is true growth. And trust me, a calm woman who has mastered her emotions will always be more powerful than a woman controlled by them. A woman who controls her emotions controls the situation. That statement is deeper than most people realize. See, emotions are powerful. They can build relationships, create connection, inspire loyalty, and bring warmth into somebody's life. But emotions without control can also become the very thing that weakens your position when someone hurts you. A lot of people confuse emotional strength with emotional expression. They think being strong means saying everything they feel the moment they feel it. But true emotional strength is the ability to feel deeply without losing control of yourself. That changes everything. When a man hurts a woman emotionally, the natural reaction is pain. And pain wants attention. Pain wants answers. Pain wants closure immediately. That's why so many women start overthinking, over-texting, over-explaining, and emotionally chasing after disrespect. But the problem is this: when your emotions lead every decision, you stop seeing clearly. You start reacting instead of observing. You start defending yourself to someone who already understands your value. You start trying to convince somebody to care instead of asking yourself why you are accepting behavior that hurts your peace. And that emotional imbalance gives away your power. Now listen carefully. Controlling your emotions does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean pretending not to care. It does not mean suppressing your feelings until you explode later. It means learning discipline. It means refusing to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. Because some of the worst mistakes people make happen in emotional moments. One emotional phone call, one desperate message, one moment of weakness, one reaction driven by loneliness instead of wisdom. And afterward, regret follows. But a woman who has emotional control moves differently. She still feels pain, but she doesn't let pain embarrass her standards. She still feels disappointment, but she doesn't allow disappointment to destroy her dignity. That kind of self-control is rare today. Most people are emotionally impulsive. They react instantly to everything. If they feel ignored, they panic. If they feel rejected, they chase. If they feel hurt, they explode emotionally. And because of that, they become easy to manipulate. But emotional discipline makes you powerful because it makes you unpredictable. People expect emotional chaos. They expect reactions. They expect access to your feelings whenever they want it. But when you stay calm, composed, and self-aware, suddenly the dynamic changes. Now they can't control your emotions anymore. And the moment someone loses emotional control over you, they start feeling uncertain. That uncertainty creates respect. See, confidence is not loud all the time. Real confidence is quiet. It's the ability to walk away from disrespect without needing to destroy somebody first. It's the ability to maintain your composure when emotions are trying to pull you into drama. And let me tell you something important. A woman who can remain calm under emotional pressure becomes unforgettable because calmness signals self-worth. It says, I value myself too much to lose control over somebody else's behavior. That energy is powerful. A lot of women think love requires endless tolerance. They think being understanding means accepting emotional inconsistency, disrespect, confusion, and broken promises repeatedly. But emotional intelligence teaches you that understanding somebody's behavior does not mean excusing it. You can understand why someone acts the way they do and still decide it no longer deserves access to your life. That's maturity. And maturity requires emotional control. Because without emotional control, people stay trapped in cycles. They keep returning to situations that hurt them simply because emotions are stronger than logic in the moment. They confuse attachment with love. They confuse temporary attention with commitment. They confuse emotional highs with genuine stability. But a disciplined woman learns to pause before reacting. She watches patterns. She listens to actions more than words. She notices consistency instead of excuses. And because of that, she protects herself better emotionally. Now let's be real. Emotional control is not easy. There will be nights when you want to text him, moments when loneliness makes you question yourself, times when your heart wants closure so badly that your mind becomes weak. That's human, but growth happens in those moments. Every time you choose dignity over desperation, you grow stronger. Every time you choose silence over emotional chaos, you grow wiser. Every time you choose self-respect over temporary validation, your confidence deepens. And eventually, you stop needing external reassurance to feel valuable. That's freedom. Because now your peace no longer depends on someone texting back. Your mood no longer depends on someone choosing you correctly. Your confidence no longer collapses because somebody failed to appreciate your heart. You become emotionally grounded. And emotionally grounded women are difficult to shake. They don't beg for attention. They don't compete for love. They don't lose themselves trying to keep somebody who keeps hurting them. Instead, they remain centered, focused, calm. And that calmness creates strength most people cannot understand. Because the strongest person in any emotional situation is usually the one who can remain composed while everybody else is reacting emotionally. That's why emotional control changes your entire life. It protects your peace, sharpens your judgment, and reminds people that your heart is not something they can play with carelessly. And trust me, nothing commands respect more than a woman who knows how to control her emotions without losing her softness, her dignity, or her sense of self. Distance is one of the most powerful teachers in life. Not anger, not arguments, not emotional speeches, distance. Because people rarely understand the value of something when they have unlimited access to it. That's human nature. When someone knows you'll always answer, always forgive, always stay, always explain, and always return, no matter how badly they treat you, they slowly become comfortable with your presence. Not necessarily because they're evil, but because familiarity often creates carelessness. And that's why distance changes everything. See, when a man hurts a woman, most women instinctively move closer emotionally. They try harder. They communicate more. They overthink more. They fight harder for clarity, attention, and reassurance. But sometimes the more available you become after disrespect, the less your presence is appreciated. Because access without boundaries removes urgency. Now listen carefully. Distance is not about manipulation. It's not about trying to teach someone a lesson through childish games. Real distance is about giving yourself room to breathe, think, heal, and reconnect with your own value. And something interesting happens when you stop emotionally chasing someone who hurt you. Silence enters the connection. Space enters the connection. And in that space, reflection begins. Because when your energy is constantly available, people don't have time to feel your absence. Your presence becomes expected instead of appreciated. But the moment your energy pulls back, the emotional atmosphere changes completely. Now they notice what used to be there. The good morning messages, the emotional support, the attention, the warmth, the consistency, the comfort of knowing someone genuinely cared. And suddenly, what once felt ordinary starts feeling rare. That's why distance creates reflection. A lot of people only recognize emotional value when they experience emotional absence. Now let me say something important. This does not mean you disappear to manipulate emotions. It means you stop overextending yourself for someone who keeps taking your effort for granted. There's a difference. A mature woman understands that constantly forcing closeness with someone who keeps hurting her only damages her self-respect. At some point, you have to stop trying to convince people to value what they already had access to. And that's where distance becomes powerful, because distance reveals truth. When you stop chasing conversations, you see who reaches out naturally. When you stop carrying the emotional weight of the relationship, you see who actually contributes. When you stop fixing everything, you discover whether the connection survives without your constant effort. Distance exposes reality, and sometimes reality hurts. Sometimes you realize the relationship only functioned because you kept saving it. Sometimes you realize the attention was one-sided. Sometimes you realize you were emotionally loyal to somebody who only loved your availability. But painful truth is still better than comfortable illusion, because truth allows growth. Now here's something many women struggle to accept. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your heart. Just because you love deeply does not mean you must tolerate emotional inconsistency forever. Love without boundaries turns into self-neglect, and self-neglect eventually destroys confidence. That's why distance can become healing. The moment you stop focusing entirely on someone else's behavior, you finally hear your own thoughts clearly again. You start noticing how emotionally drained you became, how anxious you felt, how much of your peace disappeared trying to maintain a connection that kept hurting you. And slowly, your energy starts returning to you. You begin sleeping better, thinking clearer, smiling naturally again, rebuilding your confidence, rediscovering parts of yourself that got buried under emotional exhaustion. That transformation is powerful, because now the relationship no longer defines your emotional stability. Now you are becoming whole again on your own. And ironically, that's often when the other person starts reflecting the most. Why? Because confidence attracts attention. People notice when your energy changes. They notice when you stop begging for validation. They notice when your happiness no longer depends on them. And nothing creates reflection faster than realizing somebody you thought would always stay has emotionally evolved beyond needing your approval. Now let's be real. Distance is uncomfortable at first. You'll miss conversations. You'll replay memories. You'll feel tempted to reach out during lonely moments. That's normal. But healing often feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. Growth requires separation from unhealthy emotional patterns. And sometimes distance is the only thing strong enough to break emotional dependency. Because dependency makes people tolerate things they should walk away from. But distance rebuilds perspective. It reminds you that your identity is bigger than one person's attention. It reminds you that peace matters. It reminds you that love should not constantly feel like emotional survival. And most importantly, distance reminds you of your worth. See, the goal is not to make someone suffer without you. The goal is to stop suffering trying to keep someone who keeps hurting you. That's the difference. A woman who understands this becomes emotionally powerful. She stops chasing closure from people unwilling to change. She stops forcing connections that only survive through her effort. She stops abandoning herself to maintain temporary emotional comfort. Instead, she chooses peace. And trust me, The moment someone realizes your energy is no longer available the same way it used to be, reflection begins naturally. Because absence has a way of revealing value that constant presence often hides. Your energy is your power, not your beauty alone, not your words alone, not even your emotions alone. Your energy, the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to pain, the way you walk into a room, the way you protect your peace, the way you value yourself when nobody is clapping for you. That energy tells people everything about how they can treat you. And one of the biggest mistakes people make after getting hurt is giving away their energy to the person who caused the pain. They spend days overthinking, stalking social media, replaying conversations, waiting for messages, imagining scenarios, and emotionally attaching themselves to confusion. Without realizing it, they are feeding their energy into something that is draining them. And the more drained you become emotionally, the weaker you feel mentally. That's why protecting your energy is so important, because energy affects everything. It affects your confidence, your decisions, your peace, your self-worth, your ability to think clearly. And when your energy is constantly focused on someone who keeps hurting you, eventually you lose connection with yourself. Now listen carefully.